Well, look, Sheriff, I want to thank you for coming today. I mean, it's been a long time. Gosh, I don't think it's been probably 2-3 years.
It's probably been 3 years.
It feels like a long, long time. And I know you've been busy. I see you out there doing a yeoman's job. And let's talk about crime. What's going on in Nash County, in the area? And I know you've had some challenges with staffing, as we all have. And so let's just start there. What are you seeing?
You know, I just come back from Homeland Security School down in Georgia. I spent 2 weeks down at FLETC. That's the premier law enforcement training in America. And I see the trends going on across this country and, you know, even international. We had international people in the class. We're very blessed to be in the area we're in. We're very blessed to have the court system that we've got here, the federal and the state. Right. It makes me feel good to walk into that courthouse and know that there's a justice system here that upholds justice. Right. And we're working on getting the backlogs fixed. It just takes time. But, you know, law enforcement is so professional in this area. We are very fortunate to have the law enforcement officers we have. Right. But as I've been in the newspaper and everything else, you know, I've got 16 openings right now. Right. And earlier in the year, I was told, well, it's a play on words. You don't have 16. No, I've got 16 openings.
Well, let's just clarify that right now. So perhaps based on the budget you were given, there are only 6 unfilled based on the budget. That's not necessarily the 16 total that are needed or that you did have or that were previously funded. So, I mean, let's just, you know, that's a little bit of, you got to dissect that a little bit for folks really to understand that.
Right. And the dissection that you got to look at is understand that this is positions that were given to Nash County Sheriff's Office as a business contract, a promise.
Right. You need them.
And obviously you need them. Right. You got to have them. 543 square miles. Right. And we were having 8 deputies on a squad, and now it's down to 5, and sometimes struggling to find 5. Sometimes it's 4. Sometimes it's having to have command staff out. It affects public safety.
Well, and let's talk about that a little bit, because I know a little something about it, but, you know, in our police department, I mean, you arrest somebody, well, now you got to go charge them. So now you got to go find the magistrate. So that takes somebody off the beat for a period of time. So you're down even more. Your force reduction in terms of effective coverage for the county in that particular period is down.
You know, we don't only have to do what the city does, but we have to do transports, mental transports. So the hospital will call and say, hey, we got to have a transport to Old Vineyard or halfway across the state. I have to take one of these patrol people. A whole shift, they're gone. And now I'm down to 4 people or 3 people. Right. We had an armed robbery where there was an actual tracker put in the bag. And if it was not for myself and one of the governor's highway safety cars out working, these people would have to respond chasing a guy with an AR-15 type rifle by themselves. You know, I've preached this, and I can tell anybody, I am a situational expert on law enforcement. Sure. I've did it over 35 years. I've been to the top schools in America. I understand what it takes to be in law enforcement, what it takes to have a law enforcement functioning office that is proactive, keeping safe communities. And we're at the point now where you cut my budget at the beginning of the year. Don't even tell me you take money away from positions, and then you come back and say, oh, yeah, you're only so short. Because you knew that I wasn't going to be able to hire people at the rate we're at. I saw an EMS person make a conversation, and he got up and made a presentation to the county commissioners. He says he's losing $800 a month. And he says, that means something to me. Right. I got to thinking about it. I've got deputies that are in Nash County that they can come to my office or they can come to Rocky Mountain. By the way, I want to thank you, Mayor, for what you did for the police department, helping their pay with the council. That's awesome. There's $14,000 difference. That's $1,000 a month. Right. Over $1,000 a month difference. If I come to Rocky Mount, you've not got to do mental transports. You don't have to do patrols on 543 square miles where you're out there by yourself. Right. I mean, by yourself. By yourself. There's nobody coming to back you up because I have 4 officers working and you've got all these areas and 543 square miles.
Might get lucky, maybe a highway patrol's around if you're in a crisis, but you can't count on it.
That's exactly right. And that's where we as a county, not only EMS, but law enforcement, it was first told by one of the commissioners that says, well, it's not going to happen. I said, and it was the chairman of county commissioners. Right. I said, it's going to happen. Right. He tells me, no, that pay is not going to happen. Well, then after it does happen, I contacted several of the council members and they said, yeah, it's happening. He said, well, it's not sustainable.
Right.
Well, it is sustainable.
Well, you called me.
I called you, and you said, yes, it's sustainable.
Well, we got to do it. Well, here was our decision, right? So at that time, we had something like 40 open positions.
Right.
And you got to make a decision. I mean,
Sure.
what do you want to pay for? And, our violent crime was starting to tweak up. Folks are feeling unsafe. We have, in every poll that I've run since before I ran for mayor, public safety has been number one. I mean, without question. I mean, far and above number one. Number two is like what almost doesn't matter. It has come down. That's the good news. But you have to do something. And it's not anything that anybody wants to spend money on. But can you think of a better value than law enforcement to spend money on?
Well, here's the other value. When I was listening to this presentation by the EMS worker,
right, they
don't even have EMS workers full-time in the south end of the county.
I heard that.
If I'm running with a blue light and siren from Nashville, not even at the extreme end of the county, it'll take you 15 to 18 minutes with a blue light and siren on to get down there.
Right.
Time matters. Nash County is a very good county. Mm-hmm. We can do better. Mm-hmm. We have got to focus on taking care of public safety, and other things will grow. If people come here and they see that public safety is one of our issues, they're not reinvesting here. And as wonderful as the weather is here, mm-hmm. as wonderful as everything else is no traffic problems, how close you are to Raleigh, right. You've got to have a strong law enforcement group, because the law enforcement deputy is the ambassador of that county. Everybody looks at the car he's driving, looks at him, looks at his professionalism. You don't get that at another agency, and several agencies. I won't even compare you to the ones in Wake County. Right. They're making over $1,000 more at another agency.
Right.
These deputies have to feed their families.
Well, they do. And I will say this too, as an aside, not as an aside, this is the main thing. I mean, without you, your leadership, and even Clee over in Edgecombe County, I think we would have even bigger challenges. I'm amazed at the quality of deputies and command staff that you have, and since he's part of our little community too, Clee, and it's only because people love what you're doing, love the direction, they want to be doing it, but at the same time, to your point, at some point you're saying, okay, I love my job, love the people around me, but I gotta feed my family.
And I had lunch today with Clee Atkinson. Me and him, we speak every day. We were shift partners. We worked together on the road for 12 years. Right. I know what he's thinking. He knows what I'm thinking. We were talking about these twin counties. We both have a passion to do this.
Right.
We want to do what's right, but he's under the same restraints that I am.
Right.
You have got to put money there if you want proactive, good law enforcement to get the criminals, the guns, and the drugs out of your community.
Sure.
And we're doing a phenomenal job with it. I was even questioned by an old county manager one time. He said, I'm used to an ABC, or not the ABC method of law enforcement. I said, what are you talking about? He said, that federal alphabet, you got them on FBI, task forces, DEA. Right. He says, you need to be more like Andy Griffith. He says, where you go out and you write a ticket and then you just go out and do something. He said, that's it. I said, well, you'll never get that out of me.
Well, I think one of your successes has been bringing a real law enforcement edge to the county and to the job of sheriff. And I think that's been a hallmark of your success and your popularity, quite frankly. I mean, your popularity ratings and re-elections have been clearly obvious. And so I think that's what people appreciate. I remember the old days where the sheriff's deputy served papers, eviction notices, transported people to mental institutions, and tried not to give anybody a ticket because that's politically not popular, and would respond when they had to, but really just didn't want to. But you stepped it up. You've made a big difference, and I know that people feel that. And again, just look at the popularity rating, and that's what that's about. It's about the law enforcement that you brought to the community, and so thank you for that.
Well, the two things me and Clee both ran on this. Yeah. You have our telephone number.
I do.
I used it in my last election. Everybody does. 252-885-6161.
Right.
I get more tips of solving crimes and more stuff going on because my phone number's out there.
Sure.
Sheriff Atkinson's is out there too. Both of us are out there. We want to protect our communities. Yep. We live in our communities, but we want to see it to do better. And we can't do it when we're $20,000 less than another paying agency over here.
Right.
And my question is, and I'll pose it to you, Nash County is part of Rocky Mount.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most of the funding for the tax base of Rocky Mountain, and this comes from one of your councilmen that posed this to me.
Yeah.
He says, most of your tax base comes from the Nash County side. He said, so everybody in the city of Rocky Mountain pay taxes
That's right.
to Nash County.
That's right.
He said, now, Nash County don't pay it to Rocky Mountain because we're only a small portion of it. He said, so Sheriff, how are we doing it and you can't?
And we're paying for a police department, right?
Right.
We represent, depending on what numbers you look at and how you divide it, about roughly 48% of the entire tax base for Nash County. And the same is true for Edgecombe County.
Right.
But the common issue here is that a lot of people feel we don't feel like we get a lot of benefit for that. Yet we're charging the same thing. And of course, it's a little denser population. That makes it easier to enforce a lot of things, as you know. But but still, if you're getting 48% from the city of Rocky Mount, you're not having the same coverage expectations because we have a police force.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is kind of like, well, where's that money going? So let's just break this down. What is the number? What does 16 deputies mean in terms of current pay, and then what would a reasonable increase be for everybody? What are we talking about here? $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a year?
It was $800,000.
Okay.
And if the money was not spent in other places and frozen and things of that nature, which we didn't even know until later getting into this game, we could have did every bit of this with lap salary. Lap salary is what you should have funded us at the very start.
Right.
And this money is sitting there for salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, with the openings that we've had, then you could have come back and said, something, especially now after 6 months of it, we're going to let you utilize that, and we're going to fund those positions for you so that you can get back full.
Sure.
But there was no appetite by what I was told of the Board of Commissioners. I've got a master's degree in business, and I understand business.
Sure.
If there's no appetite for it, I wonder why. I wonder where your focus is at. Is it for safety? Is it for EMS drivers? Where's the focus at? Because when you call 911, you're wanting someone at your house pretty quick. And don't think that things like this can't happen. I look at it across the state of North Carolina. Horrific things happen in good areas. Just because you think you live in a good area, that might not necessarily be true.
Bad guys have cars too.
That's exactly right. And they're all in the communities and everywhere else. Crisis in America and law enforcement, that was one of the leadership in crisis was the class I was at.
Right.
Looking at the crisis that's out here with active shooters, with the fentanyl program, with felons with firearms. There is so much going on and where you need proactive law enforcement. But when my senior command staff and myself have to take calls to keep up what's going on, it's really a shame when there's only about 7 people that say, no, let's don't do this and let's just hold off.
Well, and I was going to ask you, so what does will mean? Does that mean, is it a poll of council in this case or commissioners, or is it a poll of actual constituents? Because I know every time I do, we'll call it a constituent poll. Public safety is number one. I'm telling you, Sheriff, it is number one. It's gone from 75% down to 41%, which is good.
Right.
And that's a direct result of funding the 40 vacancies that we had. And we've still got some compression issues that we need to deal with. It's not done, and it's never done.
Right.
But so I was interested. So $800,000 on a budget. I don't know what Nash County's budget is, but I'm assuming it's similar to Rocky Mount, somewhere around $100 million a year.
Right.
You're talking about like 0.08%. We're not talking about, we're talking about, 8%, I guess we are.
And we knew the whole time that there was a reevaluation coming, and
Sure.
it was speculated by the chairman that it was going to be 30% or 20%, possibly 30%. Look what the reevaluation has shown. But also look at the number of homes and building permits that everybody's bragging about for Nash County.
Right.
But your law enforcement coverage is going down.
Well, and not to mention the rebasing of the ad valorem taxes. So, I know that Nash County is going through a revaluation right now. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like. I know we don't go with, no, we don't increase the taxes directly, but the ad valorems are moving up based on what the valuations are moving up. The tax rate's not, but the value is, right? So,
it shows that we're in a very good position. And we were told during this last issue that where they were looking at a casino, said they didn't need it because we're in a very good position. Well, if you're in a very good position, then why don't you take care of those law enforcement officers that are protecting your community? You want an officer that has good communication skills, good de-escalation skills, and a community person. Mm-hmm. Well, to find that professional, you got to pay that professional. We just saw what happened in Memphis, Tennessee, where they had road cops went bad. Mm-hmm. Well, they do that when there's no real supervision and you start off with not a good candidate.
Right.
So you've got to have very reputable people, and the way you get these people is you got to pay them.
Well, you do. And look, it's a scary job. I can't imagine it. I mean, out on the road alone.
Sure.
And nobody's calling me to have a cup of coffee and chew the fat. I mean, yeah, something bad's happening, and I need to go respond.
They never call you for a cup of coffee or cake. It's always something that's going on, whether it's something minor or it's something very horrific.
Right.
And I always remember, whatever they call you for is very intense in their mind, or they wouldn't call you in the first place.
Right. So anyway, we're talking about, less than $1 million would at least get you to a place that you feel like you could manage the county a lot better.
We would have people stand in the line just like your police department does right now. You've got more applicants over there now. We don't get applicants.
Well, we do. And like I said, we still have more to do with all of our salaries. That's created some compression problems that we're going to have to address. Nobody's really talking about that yet. Other departments, as you have seen, are maybe a little irate about it, but we're going to have to address it. We've got to pay for it somehow.
Right.
I mean, these are services that people want, they expect. I don't want my taxes to go up, but at the same time, I don't want to be without. I don't want to live in a place where they've defunded the police. I don't want to be in a place where I don't have that line of protection. I do not.
I saw the movement across America with defunding the police, and I heard about it in Portland and Seattle and all those issues. Now they're wanting the police, and they're paying them very well.
That's right.
Well, we thought we were in a pretty good position right here. And I can tell you, when you cut positions and take money from it and don't fund it, it's defunding the police. You can paint that pig any way you want to, but at the end of the day, he's a painted pig, and what you've got is a defunded police.
Right. So where are we going next? What's happening in the county? I mean, clearly we've got some issues in the southern part of the county that I hear about. I'm not really touching that in a real way or hearing about it. But EMS sounds like that's a challenge that's going on.
It is a challenge, and not only a challenge to me and you, it is to my officers. God forbid one of those need an ambulance because of something going on. What about your firemen going into firehouses and things of that nature?
Sure.
And we don't have that. We need a well-funded, and I think we've spoke of this on and on and on. Law enforcement, EMS, fire, telecommunicators, you've got to fund it to have it.
Mm-hmm.
If the facts are true that's been put out there several times, if you do not have an ambulance driver in the south end of the county, not on one time, but several times, there's an ambulance sitting there, but nobody to drive it, that is a scary situation. From home with your children, if one of them choke.
Right. Heart attack. I'm of the age that I have to actually think about that, right?
Or heart attacks, strokes, car wrecks. I was on the highway patrol for 30 years. I never, ever remember when there was an ambulance in an area. Right. And I worked both counties, Nash and Edgecombe County. There would be an ambulance en route. Right. That, especially, everybody drives or rides. There's no one person I know that never gets in a car. Yeah. And that's one of the leading causes of death and injury in America.
So what's causing that? Is that funding, or is that, I have no idea. Is that,
From what I was told, it's totally funded.
Okay.
But, and I watched a presentation with one of the ex-EMS workers got up there and says, hey, this is the problem, our funding. He says, I'm losing $800 a month or a pay period because of the funding. I could go somewhere else and do this. That's real to these people.
Sure it is.
And I think if you go and ask the people on the street, just walk up to them and say, do you want an ambulance driver in your community here for you? They're going to tell you yes. Do you want an area deputy here for you? Mm-hmm. Yes, you do. Do you want a fireman with a quick response? You do. If you go back and really look at it, the places that have good schools, good public safety, and businesses to go to, they excel.
That's right. Well, schools in particular and public safety, no question about it. And unfortunately, some of those are generational fixes.
It takes time.
It takes time, but we need them. And, I want to not think about it, but I want it to be as Johnny on the spot as soon as I need something. Right? That's just where we all are.
And that's where it should be. You're paying a tax dollar. You want these things.
Right.
I don't think all the time as a shell building sitting out here on the side of the NC 97 that you're hoping to get somebody in. Nobody really don't care about that shell building that you build over here, hoping to get progress in the county. Yeah. I think what they're worried about is there somebody sitting over there to respond to my house if I need it? Yeah. I just think me and my family, that's what we want.
Well, speaking of shell building, this is a completely aside, but I keep hearing that from our economic developers too. We need a shell building. We need a shell building. We need product to move. But everybody I talk to, they have their own plans as to what they want. So,
Right.
So my building is not necessarily what you're looking for, but it does help you get a visual, I suppose. Although with that said, I've seen several communities sell several buildings, but you're right. Day in and day out, you want the infrastructure in place that's going to make the difference. And folks are, they'll come to the county as we need. What we want is to live in the county. That's one of the things I saw when QVC burned down is that it really didn't employ more than 300 or 400 folks in Nash and Nash County. And the vast bulk of those folks came from Wilson County, Pitt County, as far away as South Boston. We've got to create an environment where people want to live because that's really where you build a tax base.
Right. You've got to have good housing, good schools, and good public safety.
When you go to the grocery store and you spend money, when you go to the restaurant, you spend money, that's helping other folks make a living. That's what's regurgitating within the community. That's creating the values that we need.
And, it's real simple, but we've got to invest in our community to make a community grow. It's real simple.
Well, Sheriff, I tell you what, I want to thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you fighting the fight. Keep on keeping on, and know that we're 100% supportive of you. And anything we can do, just let us know.
I know that, and I will say again, I want to commend you and your council for what you did for public safety. That shows that it can be done if you really care. Now, you can sit out here and say you care, but if you don't do anything about it, I wonder how much you really do care. But you all of you proved it, and it's a success.
Sheriff, we saw 40 vacancies, 40.
And now you got people standing in line.
That's right. But I mean, that was a dire place. I mean, we were at a place that just routine stuff like events at the event center. We were burning out our police officers, even the ones that, even at some point you get overtime and you're getting a nice wage, but you can't give it so many hours either. You've got to have some rest. And we were seeing that happen over and over and over on routine stuff. We were talking to your off-duty deputies. We were talking to Clee's off-duty deputies. We were trying to work deals with all of y'all. But, the coverage matters too. And 40 openings is just a lot. So I've seen what it looks like, and you don't want to go there.
No, you don't. Well, let's put a sport perspective to it.
Right.
Everybody's going to be watching the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Now, you watch the two head coaches. They're magicians at their job of doing what they're doing. But they let their real players rest in most critical times that's coming up.
That's right.
We got to figure out the same thing. You can't work that police officer and that deputy here. Well, you can go out there and work overtime and do this. No, they need family time with their family, and they need rest time. A tractor-trailer driver can't even drive but so much because that patrol car guy is driving just like he is, and sometimes he's having to drive well above the speed limit to respond to something.
Right.
Well, if you make it fair for a tractor-trailer driver saying you don't need to do this because it's a safety concern.
Right.
What about the law enforcement officer that's been working 12, 14, 16 hours, and he's got to go to your house and de-escalate something, or something bad happened like a critical incident of an active shooter or something, he's got to shoot accurate.
Well, he's got to make a decision in a nanosecond. He's got to make it the right one.
And it's got to be right.
And it'll be analyzed 100 times.
Sure it will. And then the county, the city, and everybody else is responsible for it. So you got to let these men and women rest, and you can't work them just saying, well, you can go do overtime. Overtime's good.
Yeah.
But what about the front end? So they don't have to do that.
Well, that's what we were seeing. That's what we were seeing is that once we lost those folks, then we're having to lean on folks to help with overtime. We have maybe a small crisis, and we're pushing out more force strength, but you just can't burn people out. And so that was a thing that wasn't really a surprise to me, but I hadn't really considered it as it related to law enforcement.
Right.
But it was real. And so it's not just the funding, it's also the holes do matter in terms of being able to provide that coverage.
One of the things as a leader on the highway patrol and now as sheriff, I was taught way, way back when I become a first line supervisor, don't think about the 8-hour shift on down. Look at the supervision 16 hours down the road. What have you got to do to prepare those men and women so if you have an event, you have force multipliers to come out and do this?
Right.
That's what I don't have now. When I'm 16 deputies short right now, these guys and girls are working. They're having to give up vacations. They're having to do these type things.
And they'll do it for a long time. They will, but they can't do it forever. I don't care how much they love you, how much they love the county, how much they love being here.
Right. And then when I look at them, I'm like, no, your family first. You need to be spending time with your family. You don't need to be out here working part-time doing things of that nature.
Well, Sheriff, we're going to lick this problem. I'm excited to see it happen. I know it's going to happen. And thank you so much for taking the time and what you're doing. Really.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity.
You bet.
Yes.